Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are about to begin this evening, and I would like to take this moment to introduce to you our speaker for the evening, because we want to know why have all of us come together? Why ET Tech Leaders Choice Awards Think-Teal? And to tell us more about it, this session will be delivered by Apalak Ghosh, who will talk about how data has evolved over the years and how it is driving India's digital index. He will also provide the context to ET choice of tech leaders and the process that was followed. Apalak is the founder and chief analyst at Think-Teal. Think-Teal is an analyst firm tracking the enterprise technology market in India. Apalak is an expert in a broad spectrum of technology areas, including big data and analytics, cyber security, cloud services, data center services, IoT, and network transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Apalak Ghosh. Mr. Apalak is about to join us right here. Founder and chief analyst, Think-Teal, joining us here today. Lovely having you with us, sir.
Thank you. You make me sound really nice. Yeah. I didn't know all of this about myself. I know I have a super unenviable task in front of all of you. I'm the last speaker for the evening. You had a fairly long day. And a last speaker, there are a couple of things that you mentioned. You said the drinks are about to start, the awards are going to be given out, and then I have a 5 feet 5 inch person like me in awaiting all of this. So I'll keep it short. I'll tell you the context of why this awards practice, how we decided on the parameters, how did we decide on the nominations. But before that, I thought, let me walk you through the history of data. We speak about digital transformation, so we thought at our end, how does data drive all of this? So if you take a step back, I was probably, and I'm sure a lot of people who are, who love data in and out, have been capturing all of this. So to begin with, data has been since ages immemorial, right? The first possible thing that was the Big Bang, which happened around 13.7 billion years ago, right? Then about 19,000 BC, is the first time when data was captured. I did all of this just a few days back before I had to present this. And I found a lot of interesting anecdotes. So apparently the first time when data was captured on something called the Ishango bone. This is a time when our predecessors, right, captured information on a bamboo bone, right? As you all know, we didn't have paper at that point of time, right? So this is possibly the first time data got captured. So moving ahead, you have this gentleman, John Grant. Apparently, this is how we see a lot of simile to what we are right now living in, right? John Grant was essentially, by profession, a hat maker, but he devised a way. This is a time when London had one of its worst pandemics, as it's called the London plague, the Great London Plague. And what he did was, his work was, he tabulated the number of deaths that were taking place in London. So that was the first time that we observed data analysis. And his method was so strong eventually, it kind of gave people a prediction of when is the next wave of pandemic going to hit us, and what is the mortality ratio of the people living in. And if numbers are to be believed, 20% of London's population was wiped out by this plague, right? So this is perhaps the first time somebody used data analytics or data analysis to derive information, right? Moving ahead, you had a German-American statistician, Hermann Hollerith. So one day he was, going by a train journey, and he saw the ticket collector, punch holes. And that gave him an idea, can I start collecting information through punch holes? So that's been the way we've started, and because of this, because of his invention, the census of America back in those days which used to take years, was done in a fraction of months. Moving ahead, now I'm going to about the early 20th century. You had one German engineer, again, Fritz Fleumer, who created a magnetic tape. Prior to this, data information was captured in wires, right? So magnetic, and this was, he used a thin sheet of paper on which he put some magnetic tapes, and that's how the first magnets were introduced. It is to be believed that most floppy disks and hard disk drive, this was kind of the conceptualization of how we store data, right? Also during that time, you had Edward Cord, who kind of gave us the idea of how relational databases are made. Where the parameters are assigned in the columns and the data sets are assigned in rows. So relational database or data sets, as we know as of now, had this, I think, inaugurated somewhere around the 1964, 1965, if I'm not wrong. Then comes the stage of 1990s. It's a stage that when I was born back in 1979. Most of us have gone through this phase, and there's a phase which has gone beyond this as well. Incidentally, this is 15th March, right? Today is the first day when you had the first domain, www. Do you have any guesses of which was that company which has its first domain registered? The date was today, actually. It's a question of trivia. Anybody? Amit, you know the answer, so you'll probably be the last one to guess that. Anybody who has the answer here? Well, I have forgotten, by the way, Amit, so I'll probably reach out to you if you have the answer. Anyone? Too tough. Amit, what's the answer, man? Symbolics.com. So if you Google it, or, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say Google it, I use it as adjective. You want to Bing it, you want to Google it, you do whatever you wish to, right? The answer is symbolics.com. So today is actually the date, right? It's mere coincidence that the first domain got registered at the www.symbolics.com on the 15th of March. But now we live in the next era, which is the cognitive era, right? Ghosh was saying everybody who is in their skin in technology is speaking about this era. The last few months have been all about artificial intelligence, language processing algorithms, and so on and so forth. So I think that leads us to a basic premise of how does an organization use data. So there are various ways of how people look at digital transformation. Now, digital transformation, as the adage goes, it's a journey. It's not a buy-priest product, right? And at Think-Teal, how we thought we try to bucketize of typically when an organization embarks on a journey of digital transformation, it takes upon three processes. One is business processes, business strategy, and a very important element of internal and external stakeholders. This one in particular has gained a lot of significance, especially in the pandemic phase. We see a lot of work happening in and around customer satisfaction, for instance. We hear a lot about hybrid IT. We hear a lot about workspace modernization initiatives. But somewhere, if you look at it, data kind of stitches all of this together. Because I like to believe data is like the LCM. I'm sure you've all studied algebra. So the lowest common multiple. So data seems to be the LCM which gravitates all of this with us, right? So if you look at how data, even if you check the mega trends here, for instance, data finds its acceptance and prominence across industries, be it life sciences, be it BFSI. I know there are a few industries which are probably not captured here, but largely the big ones, be it healthcare, high tech, manufacturing, government. If you look at some of the emerging trends, be it automation, 5G, we've heard a lot about 5G these days, AI, ML, data, security. All of them have fairly big numbers to be propagated about. If you remember a couple of years back, I'm talking about, say, almost 7 to 8 years ago, there was a term which used to be out there in the market called SMAC. Some people used to refer to SMAC, some used to refer to CAMS, which stood for Social Mobility Analytics in Cloud. And it was a conundrum of how all of this is interlaced to each other. So if you see here also, you cannot think about, for instance, big data and not think of, say, for instance, AI, ML. Security is the horizontal which kind of stitch all of this together, right? What is interesting to see is across the board, data seems to pivot all our requirements, right? So it's fundamentally, when we look at the future, what does it hold for us? Obviously, data is going to increase. We see a lot of adoption of machine learning and fast and actionable data. But I'll take a pause here. Data in itself, like I said, may be the LCM, but in itself, it cannot do anything until and unless it has a chassis of three key components: infrastructure, software, and services, right? So if you see a future outlook of what infrastructure, software, and services do, I have the good fortune of, award winners here, the people who represent the supply ecosystem of the business and end users. So if you see, typically what we're looking at is the fundamental key takeaway for me at least is trying to do more with less. I think when I speak to CIOs, when I speak to IT leaders in their own right, I think today I've heard a lot of speakers talk about, I think, FinOps, for instance. I heard a lot of discussions around cloud computing. I've tracked the cloud market myself for a fairly long bit. I remember when I was authoring our first report back in 2008, 2009, in my then analyst days. I remember, we used to define what SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS stood for. But now, if you look at how cloud has really expanded itself, we see more purpose-centric cloud platforms being generated. Secondly, very importantly, I think a lot of organizations, when we speak about digital transformation, we also have a responsibility towards ESG. I know a lot of organizations here make it a mandate to ensure that they comply to ESG norms, right? Similarly, if you see software also changing, how we used to code to where we are now. We hear a lot about low code, no code. We hear a lot about new programming languages that actually shape up, which are driven by artificial intelligence. And at the services as well, we expect a lot of mega projects to be broken down into smaller projects, making it more malleable and ductile, right? So essentially, it's a convergence of data triad. And this is where I'll probably introduce what are the parameters that Think-Teal, when we defined what should be the parameters on which our industry leaders, our CIO friends, will be gauging the award winners today. So if you look at here, when we talk about importance of data in an organization, fundamentally they're fairly long. You have time to market, you have launching of new products and services, boosting creativity, innovation, improving customer experience, so on and so forth, right? You marry this with the three triads of infrastructure, services, and software. This is where you get the parameters of this award program. To give you in a nutshell, the awards program would be across infrastructure, IT services, and the software and platform which enables you to do all of this. Because I feel all the three elements are required to make data what it is, right? You need a relevant infrastructure to support it, to make data move from one point to another. Security has a big play here. Infrastructure has a play here. Services has a play here as well, right? So with this is, I won't take out all the names. This is by and large all the award categories that we have today, right? This has been a fairly interesting process for us, along with Economic Times. The choice of leader tech process, I'll keep it very simple, we first finalized the categories which we thought were relevant to data as a whole, which were essentially bucketized into infrastructure, software, and services, right? The assessment that has been done for the past 3 months. Primarily, one of the key ways of collecting this data was across several Economic Times forums itself. Forums such as this, we reached out to our CIO friends, we requested for their time, and this was this survey form, as you can see here, was a form that they filled up, right? This was done across around almost 350 odd CIO and ITDMs, right? Then finally, it came back to us at Think-Teal. We did the data analysis and scoring. And I know I'm short on time, and I'll probably rest it here. So that's it from my end. I had a quick 10-minute summary. Congratulations to all the winners. I hope to meet all of you in person. Wonderful having you.